Hi everyone, this is Renan, and in this video I'm going to teach you about variables in Python. By the end of this video, you will know what variables are, how they work, and how they relate to the different data types. Alright, so first things first, what are variables? Well, variables are a core concept in programming language, and they are used to store information. So basically you can think of them as a container where you can save some data, and then you can use that data later in your code by reference the variable name. I will give you an example. Let's suppose that you want to store my name, and I will create a variable named name. And in Python, to create a variable, you just need to give it a name and assign it a value to it. So to assign a value to this variable, I can just press space, type equals, and then I can type the value that I want. So in my case, it's a string, so I will add a single quote and I'll type my name here. All right. And in here, when the Python interpreter reads this line, it will allocate some space in my computer's memory, and it will use the variable name to point to that location. And every time that I want to use this value here, I can just use this variable name. So why do we use variables in programming language? So I will give you an example as well. Let's suppose that I want to print a greeting here. Hi, Renan. And let's suppose that I want to print this a couple of times. And at some point in my code, let's suppose that I want to change the name. I don't want Renan anymore. I want another name. What I could do in this case is just change the name in every line that I am using. But this could be kind of troublesome because in this case I am typing it 3 times, but in a real case there be hundreds of instances of the same name being used. So to prevent that trouble, what we could do is to use variables. So instead of hard coding the value here, I could use string concatenation and have a variable here, and it could have a variable here and here as well. And now I just need to change the value in one place and it would reflect everywhere that variable is being used. Alright, so this is why we use variables. Another reason that we could want to use variables is to make our code more dynamic. So in this case, I'm using a hard-coded value here, which is Renan, and every time that I run my code, it will use the same value, which is Renan. It will always print the same value. But in some case, maybe I want to receive an input from the user, which is using my program, and maybe they want to send a different information. They don't want to print Renan, they want to print something else. And for that, we could use a function. So in Python, we have the input function. We could tell the user to input their name, and we need to save that information somewhere, right? And that's why we use variable as well. So we are saving the value from the input in the variable name, and then we are using it throughout our code. So that's another reason which we could use variables for, and I'll give you a live example. So I'll run the code this time. So as you can see, it's working. And I could also use this function here directly without using variables, but it would ask for my name several different times. So I will give you an example for that as well. So as you can see, Renan, Renan, and Renan. So it's not very efficient. I could just use it one time, save it in a variable, and then I can use it throughout my code. Another concept that I want to cover with you about variables is that, as their name suggests, their value can vary. So for example, in this first line, I am receiving a value and printing it. So let's suppose that I want to change the value here to something else. So Carlos, and in here I want to give it another value, which is Pedro. And as you can see, I am reassigning values to my variable, and each line it will print a different value. As you can see, hi Hanan, hi Carlos, and hi Pedro. So that's a very important concept to understand about variables, and that's one of the reasons which make variables so powerful in programming languages as well. Alright, so now let's cover a little bit about data types. So I will delete this here and I will put my name back in here. And data types in programming languages are used for the computer to understand how much space they need to store to save that information. And they are also used for you to understand which operations you can use in a variable. So for example, I have an string in here, so I'm saving my name. And when I type the dot after the variable name, Visual Studio Code will automatically understand that this variable is a string, and it will give me some suggestions of methods and properties which a string can have. And I can use those, alright? And those are methods for a string, and if I had an integer, which is a data type for number, I would have different methods as well. So I'll give you one example for that. I will use the lower method, which makes my word all lowercase, and the number data type would not have this method available. All right, so that's why we have data types in programming languages. And in this video, I'll try to cover some of the basic data types that we have in Python, and I will try to cover the data types that hold single value or data types that holds no value. You will understand soon. And in the next video, I will cover more complex data types, the ones which will hold more than one value. All right. So the other data types that we have are numbers. So to store numbers, we are using the integer data type. All right. So it's used to store whole numbers. If you want to have numbers with decimal cases, it's another data type, which is a float. So for number with decimal places, we would want to store the price or the distance, something like this. All right. So this is a float. Another data type that we have are Boolean. So let's suppose that you have a website, and in this website, a user can be an admin or not. So a Boolean is a variable to hold that information. So let's have a variable called isAdmin, and you can save in here true if the user is an admin, or false if the user is not an admin. All right, so that's how we use Booleans. And as you can see, this is very important. The first word must be capitalized, and it should always be so. If you do not use it like that, the Visual Code will complain with you and your code will not run. So always use capitalized first letters for booleans in Python. All right, and the next data type that we have is the non-type. So let's suppose that I want to store the address as well, and I still don't have the value for the address, but I want to create the variable anyway. I can create it with a non-type, which is the absence of value. So I have no value yet for this variable, and I want to assign that value later. So I can just come in my codes and assign a value in a later time. All right, that's why non-types are used in a programming language and in Python. With this, everyone, we have covered a lot of things about variables, and the last thing that I want to cover with you is about naming. All right, so this is very important. So everyone, make sure to give descriptive names for your variables, as I'm doing here. So if I want to save the name, let's give it a name, so an age for an age, and don't make abbreviations, which people who read your code will not understand what's going on. For example, let's suppose I abbreviate distance like this, and instead of isAdmin, I just use A. So this is not very clear for whoever is reading your code. They will be confused. So make sure to give a name which everyone will understand. All right. So this is a good practice in programming. And another practice that we have in Python is to use the snake case. And what is the snake case? So it's a naming convention. So as you can see here, all my variables is starting with a lowercase, as you can see. And when I have another word, more than one word in a variable name, I will separate those words with an underline, and the next word will start with a lowercase as well. So this is the standard convention which we use for Python, which is the snake case. And I believe that this is it. everyone. So we have covered a lot about variables. So if you like this video, don't forget to leave a like below and subscribe to my channel so that you'll be notified when I post new videos about Python. Alright, so see you in the next one.